Recently, we have seen a major shift in the gaming circle, mainly fueled by the Eastern market. Games such as Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring redefined the term open world, taking the Western definition, which involved map marker-led activities and artificial level gating, and evolving it to the closest thing we have seen to freedom from games. This approach has been a clear success, garnering hugely positive responses from fans and critics alike. Yet, even with its still relatively infrequent nature, I feel tired of its influence on difficulty, tired of its expense on tailored experiences, and most of all, tired of its devolution in regards to internet gaming discourse, with the game's reception being based on its ability to allow players to kill bosses in wildly obtuse means, rather than its individual metrics of success.
Well, that was a run.
To begin with, I want to make it clear that this video essay is not one of support for Western open world games.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
They too come with their own suite of problems, mainly due to the fact that they are heavily influenced by monetization.
Hello, I like money.
Companies can leverage the playtime of a game in hopes of a return in XP boosters and other microtransactions. This tried and tested approach dominated the 7th and 8th generation of games, with titles such as the Far Cry series and the later Assassin's Creed games siphoning money from Western audiences. This ultimately led to Breath of the Wild's success, which was able to break free from the status quo of open worlds and create a truly unique experience back in 2017. And to be honest, I was completely on board. The first time realizing that you are placed in this magical world with little to no constraints, with a singular goal which can be achieved in any which way the player desires, is an amazing feeling. Every square inch of the world felt purposely built with love and care. There was no attempt to squeeze as much money out of the world as possible, and the desire to find every secret the world hid was infectious. And this was the same feeling that was able to propel Elden Ring to stardom, previously thought impossible by fans of previous From Software titles. And yet recently, I have found myself lacking much attachment to these titles, especially considering the hundreds of hours I've spent in their worlds. This leads me to my first point regarding freedom in games: a lack of developer control. In order to outline what I mean by this, let's take a more in-depth look at Miyazaki's modern-day masterpiece, Elden Ring, and how it stands against its older brothers. Elden Ring might just be one of the largest games I've ever played. I don't mean that in terms of the game world, which certainly isn't small, but more so its activities per square inch. Looking at a fully detailed map with every interactable on it is almost comical. No game has offered players quite so much, and at quite such a high consistent quality as Elden Ring. So, what's my issue then? Well, compared to FromSoft's other Soulsborns, it lacks something integral, a shared journey. Everyone's time playing through Elden Ring is wholly unique, which is nothing short of astounding. Yet, I feel as though each of these journeys pale in comparison to the heavily tailored journey through FromSoft's previous worlds. The shared pain of having to make your way through Shrine of Amana, or having to overcome Ornstein and Smough, and even returning to Anor Londo covered in darkness, is something all players of these games have had to experience. This isn't mutually exclusive with individuality though. Every player's experiences within these areas differ, allowing for a shared discussion to happen with the required pragmatic knowledge, but with their own stories to tell. Elden Ring does have these moments, such as the royal capital and a handful of bosses, but in terms of the greater world, there's just so much to miss. Not only this, but I feel as though the tighter focus seen in the previous works allow for a higher standard of quality. The bosses in Dark Souls 3 are, at least in my opinion, exponentially better than most in Elden Ring.
You don't want to be like this.
When considering the whopping 238 bosses in Elden Ring is more than 19 times the amount in Dark Souls 3, it's no wonder there's a slight difference in quality due to a higher quantity. This point is purely one of admiration for FromSoft's ingenious game design. I want to see everything they have to offer in the desired order and difficulty they choose. So often in my playthroughs, I approach bosses way over leveled, taking them out without a second thought. I want a more tailored experience so that I can play through it the way the developers intend, or at least in a way that shares a common journey with others. And so I decided to take on one of Elden Ring's most difficult challenges, a Rune level 1 run. In layman's terms, this just means no leveling up. I have to beat the entire game at level 1, which means I can only use a handful of weapons and items which are accessible at the base stats. By following a pre-established guide, I was able to find myself a truly tailored experience, and it was really great. Well, more accurately, is really great. I'm still getting my ass whipped by Fire Giant.
I hit roll! Roll!
When the player has so much choice in where to go, often the main quest is not their first choice. This can lead to overleveling, or the acquisition of weapons and items which trivialize the main experience. The example that comes to mind here is Pokémon. The most recent titles, Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, are what I always wanted in a Pokémon game. A world to explore, Pokémon wandering around to catch, and gyms to take on in any order I want. And while that was exactly what I got, I found that it really wasn't what I wanted. The game was just too trivial. While Pokemon games have always been somewhat easy, this was just a joke. If you want to have any sense of challenge, you need to basically avoid any leveling outside of the gym fights or their equivalents. In previous Pokemon games, the flow of having the next gym battle ahead kept me on a consistent leveling grind, without too much XP farming, and it generally felt like I was always correctly leveled. But with this added freedom comes complications. While you can take on any gym when you want, there is an order to follow, otherwise the whole thing just falls apart. While there are many Pokemon in the open world, you can also now just ignore them completely, even in harder areas. And while the world is very open, it's also very, for lack of a better word, ugly.
What the hell is this?
The older Pokemon games hold up today due to their constraints. You have to fight each gym in order of difficulty. There are trainers which can KO your Pokemon if you're not careful, and you will always have to find some wild ones when walking through grass. Sadly, Pokemon and many other RPGs thrive off their rules and constraints. When adding freedom to that mix, it becomes messy, and in the case of Pokemon, clearly not very effective. Recently, freedom has become synonymous with innovation, yet this desire for freedom has come at a cost for many games. The translation from a tailored semi-open world game to a fully free open world one has its consequences. Breath of the Wild, whilst a massive success, has garnered discourse regarding whether it truly feels like a Legend of Zelda game. Much like the transition from 2D to 3D in the 90s, it's a case-by-case basis. Hopefully Pokemon will return to its roots, innovating in other ways to stay relevant. And finally, freedom has become just another piece of jargon for companies as a metric for success. More and more in modern games and their advertising, having more things stuffed in the game for the player is seen as a good thing, yet its actual influence over the game itself is questionable.
What the hell is even that?
Take the advertising for games such as Borderlands, where the more freedom the player has in terms of their loadouts is what is heavily focused on in its advertising. 1 billion guns, while technically impressive, has near to no influence over the game's experience for the player. Had the developers made 30 guns of much higher quality, the game could have been looked upon more fondly. Games prioritizing freedom is only going to become more and more prominent in the gaming sphere. With technology advancing, developers can fully bring their ideas to fruition with less and less constraints. And with its clear success in Eastern open world games, it would be silly for developers to not capitalize. It's even begun to influence the indie scene, with titles such as Chia, which too have been received well. And I'm okay with it. Freedom has its place, and games like Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild have become quick favorites of mine. However, with this success, I just hope it doesn't devalue tailored, constrained experiences in the years to come. Thanks for watching.